Hey everybody, welcome to a special edition of the Huddle on thereview.com. I'm Rob Toder, the Alliance Review, joined as always by Mike Brown, sports editor. And today the big news, Larry Kehres, the longtime and ultra successful coach of the Mount Union Purple Raiders football program, has announced his retirement. He's turning the reins over to his son Vince, who's been the longtime defensive coordinator. And I guess, Mike, the timing, we kind of expected it, but maybe not this late in the spring. We kind of expected it after the Purple Raiders won their 11th national championship.
Yep, I think if you heard the ground rumbling in Alliance this morning about 10:30, Rob, that was the announcement coming out of Mount Union. But boy, what a great career. I mean, I've talked to so many people, throughout the nation, and especially like John Carpenter, national historian, in Kentucky, and he feels he's the best coach ever. I mean, and you look at some of the things he's done. He's won 11 national titles. I mean, he's surpassed people like Rockney and people like that.
Yeah, exactly. The greatest winning percentage in national college football history in all divisions, over 900%. Rockney second at 88%. So, but really, to the legacy that Coach Kehres will leave, not only the national championships and all the victories, but you look at the coaching ranks throughout college football. Throughout, I don't think you can go to a high school game in Ohio and not find at least one Mount Union graduate that played for Coach Kehres on a coaching staff. So
right, the Larry Kehres coaching tree is massive throughout the country. I mean, at the collegiate level, at the high school level, at the professional level, we've got some, and it's just amazing. All the guys out there who, Mount Union pedigree, and it doesn't get much better than that. It really doesn't.
For me, one of the legacies, I covered Mount Union back in 1986 when Coach Kehres took over, and I remember going over to a game the next year at Geneva, shortly after he took over, and let's just say the officials weren't kind to Mount Union on that night, and he vowed off the record he would never play another NAIA team, and they never did. And I think one of the things that stands out to me is he had a very strong vision for the program, how he wanted the program to be run, and he was very adamant in that, and through there were very few bad times. There were a couple 6-win seasons there in the late '80s, but once he got that program rolling, he it almost took care of itself.
Right, and the thing that I always remember about him as a head coach, he had that special ability, and very few coaches have that today, where his teams were always on an even keel. They were never up, they were never down, and they would always play the same way every week, and that's a credit to him because that's a rarity today.
Yeah, very disciplined teams, and also the ability to adapt to the talent that he had and the conditions. He had the ability, those teams in the 90s with all the great quarterbacks that came through, and they threw the ball, 35, 40 times a game. But if the conditions called for it, I remember some games where if it was really bad weather conditions, they could grind it out, and they just hand the ball and run and run and run. They run the ball 60 times a game if it needed to. And that always struck me as it was so easy to say, well, the weather's bad, we need to run the football, but they could do it, and where a lot of teams couldn't do it.
That's right. The thing, looking back now, after last year's national championship, our beat writer Jeff Zupanik came back and he said, it's kind of strange this time. He said, Larry spent an awful lot of time on the field with his family taking photos and stuff like that, and at the time we thought, we wonder if that's it. Well, then the winter came and the spring came and went, and he was still there, and we kind of thought that maybe he was going to be back. But I think the situation's a good one with Vince taking over because Vince has been forged in the fire of his father. I mean, his father's tough on him, and Vince is going to be a great head coach, I think, because of that. And it's the best situation for Mount Union, I think, too, Rob.
Yeah, you know Vince pretty well. I mean, how do you? Obviously, there's going to be a lot of comparisons, a lot of pressure, even at the Division III level, on Vince. If they don't go to the national championship game in 2013, the questions are going to pop up. Well, your dad would have had that team there. How do you think Vince is prepared to handle that kind of pressure?
I think he's been held to a higher standard, I think, as an assistant. And I think because of that, I think he's ready. I think he's more than ready for this job. And I think it's the best of both worlds for Mount Union because I'm sure Larry will stay a distance away, yet he'll always be there. If Vince wants to bounce a question off him or something like that, there's Larry. And I think that's the best of both worlds. being that Larry's going to step down and Vince is going to take over. I think that's a great situation there.
Okay. Well, obviously, we're going to have a lot of coverage of Coach Kehres' decision in the Alliance Review in Thursday's edition. And, of course, on the review.com, we've got live reaction already. So make sure you check out those. And it should be a collector's edition. We'll have stories on A1 with Coach Kehres' decision and reaction in the sports section of the newspaper as well. So I know you guys, Mike's guys, are working hard at it already, and we hope you pick up a copy and take a look. I think it'll be a great addition for the archives. So that's it for now. We'll check back in the fall when after Game 1, and we'll have our first critique of the Vince Kehres Purple Raiders.